And today we're joined by Bridget Folliard Terrones. She's a marketing and communications leader, and she brings a very interesting and strong blend of strategic marketing communications leadership and association marketing experience. Currently Vice President of Marketing and Communications at the Institute of Real Estate Management, that's the IREM. There she leads integrated marketing and communications initiatives that engage nearly, I'm guessing it's over, but we're going to say nearly 20,000 members, as well as broader external audiences. That's a lot of people. And her work has also been recognized across the communications industry, including receiving, nonetheless, the Silver Anvil Award for the Public Relations Society of America, and also being named in the Association Forum's 40 Under 40 list. Did I get it right so far, Bridget?
You got it right. Thank you.
Wonderful. But also beyond your professional role, you are deeply involved in giving back, or so I've heard, serving in alumni leadership roles at Lewis University and even establishing a scholarship to support women who are pursuing studies in communications and related fields. Okay, so today's conversation will explore how marketing and communications work within membership organizations, how integrated marketing creates real impact, and what it actually takes, the real thing, to lead marketing strategies that serve large professional communities. Without further ado, I'm going to say hello and welcome, Bridget. It is wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Ursula. I'm happy to be here.
I'm going to go straight to my first question because I know that you've built much of your career in association marketing and communications, but I want to know what initially attracted you to working in this space.
So I would say similar to a lot of our members who work in property management and real estate management, I just kind of fell into the fields of associations and marketing and communications within associations. So my undergrad degree is actually in broadcast. And when I graduated, it was right after the 2008 crisis here in the US. And so the market was really difficult. And on top of that, I was in broadcast, and Chicago, where I live, is a top 3 market and very hard to break through. So I spent many months trying to apply for jobs, and I struggled a lot. And then I actually had the neighbor of these 2 girls that I babysat tell me that she worked at an association and they were going to hire interns for the summer, and it was a paid internship, which wasn't a big thing back then. And so it was very incentivizing, and I decided to apply for it, and they hired me as an intern at a dental association for a summer. And I worked in the communications department there, and they ended up hiring me full time from that internship. And then I just stuck with associations since then.
So how did you adapt to the change? Because you studied broadcast and then you kind of flipped to another. How was it? How did you adjust?
So when I started my internship, it was very focused on, they wanted to do some video work, which I was very skilled in, having a broadcast degree.
I can tell.
And they were also interested in beefing up their social media presence. So it was kind of at that time when a lot of organizations knew they had to be on social media. It was a new channel to engage with people and put content out, but no one really had a strategy behind it. They literally would just create, a channel on every platform for their organization and kind of leave it. And then there wasn't content being put out on that or really any engagement among followers. And so when I came in, I built a strategy behind the pages that we had on all the social networks and started coming up with what was essentially a content strategy to give them a presence and engage with different audiences on different platforms.
That's a content strategy before we even knew what a content strategy was.
Yes. And I felt like, to your question, it really related. When I majored in broadcast, I studied radio, I did TV, and we were always coming up with concepts and ideas for shows and bits and, hosting my own radio show and figuring out what kind of content should be part of that and who the audience was and what kind of music would be playing during my airtime. And so I really just pivoted those skills into communications and social media. And social media was so new too at that time. Nobody was really an expert in it. We were all trying to navigate how this, new platforms worked and how they differed from each other and how they delivered content. So I just applied the skills that I had learned in college in different ways to fit that.
Let's talk about IREM because your work touches thousands of members, but also external audiences. How does marketing change when your audience is a professional community rather than, say, traditional customers?
I would say the biggest thing, number one is always supporting our members of the organization. And as an institute, rely heavily on education and educating industry professionals as well. And so some of our, customers are not necessarily members, at least not yet, is what we say. And then in addition to that, there's very much a focus, depending on what industry you're in your members' clients. So in this case for property management, it's very much the residents and tenants of the buildings and the places that they manage. And so they're also a segment of audience that we target and cater to and try to make aware of property managers and that they exist and the value that they bring to properties. And beyond that, we even focus on owners who own buildings and properties, and we try to get in front of them and say how important it is to have a real estate management professional managing their properties and buildings. And again, the value that they bring to them and even, the financials that they could save them in the long run by doing so.
So, from what I hear, you led integrated marketing and communication initiatives. So, what does integrated marketing actually look like in practice? Because it's something people talk about in theory, but how does it look in practice?
To me, I like to compare it to the conductor of an orchestra. So I'm really looking at all the people on my team, and each one of them plays a specific role or has specific skill sets. And I'm the one that brings them all together to make harmony or music and make everything consistent and build that experience for our audience so that it makes sense to them. And it also helps with our brand awareness and brand recognition too.
Association marketing often has to balance member value, brand awareness, and organizational goals. And those are three very big things. How do you align these priorities within a single marketing strategy?
At IREM, we rely heavily on our strategic plan. So, our board of directors every 5 years puts together a 5 year strategic plan, and we just launched a new one at the beginning of this year. And so, we have different areas of focus. This year, we're heavily focused on member value, professional development, and then community. And so, under those, we have many goals and priorities that we've developed in conjunction with the board. And it really gives us direction in all of our marketing efforts on different programs, events, education that we're focused on, and then how that drills down into how we're marketing it and who our target audience is. And so we really rely heavily on that strategic plan to then filter down into the campaigns that we're building and make an experience that makes sense to promote that product, event, or, educational offering that we have.
A 5 year strategic plan is a very long one, and things in today's world are changing all the time. Do you pivot? Do you adjust? How many times do you redo the plan?
Absolutely. Every year we review the plan where we're at that point in time, and we make adjustments as needed. So, for example, in our last strategic plan that just ended last year, it was also a 5 year plan. When we launched that, we had 4 focus areas, and then a lot of different things happened in the United States, including the pandemic. And so we actually made many pivots at that point, and we actually added a 5th pillar and really wanted to focus efforts on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we put some strategic priorities related to that and how we would promote that as part of our brand moving forward. It's now kind of interwoven into our strategic plan and still exists, but we definitely had to identify it as a goal and a focus area at the time. So it always changes.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years is a long time. You've worked across multiple roles within IREM before becoming vice president. So I want to know, and I'm guessing everyone who's listening to this podcast wants to know, How did those earlier roles shape the way in which you approach marketing leadership today?
I would even go as far back as my previous organization that I worked at too, and I had several roles there too. But at that point in my career, I actually had a mentor that told me, and she had risen through the ranks all the way up to an associate executive director, which is basically like second in command. And she had told me, like, never forget where you came from or where you started. As high as you get, never forget that, because that really grounds you. And so that has stuck with me my entire career. And I think the biggest thing with marketing leadership is not forgetting that. Yes, I lead a team of 9 people currently right now on our marketing and communications team, but I never forget where I came from. And so I make sure that I you know, really focus on each individual and what they bring to the table and honing their skills and helping them grow in different ways and really champion them in their careers as well. I would also say that, rising through those ranks at the same time, I was also getting my MBA degree. And so I specialized in digital marketing when I was earning that. And that really helped me elevate quickly in my roles at IREM, because I found myself one day having to build a budget and I didn't really have that skill set, but I was learning it in my MBA program. And I took those skills that I had learned and applied it to then build a department budget and run it and manage it from that point on. And that's just one example. And so I also feel like, education is so powerful, and I never think education or learning should stop. And it never does. It's, you should constantly be learning. And so that really armed me and gave me the skills to be able to elevate rather quickly in my career too.
You've come a long way from the girl who studied broadcast. Um, do you feel you are now in the place where you have always been supposed to be?
That's an interesting question because I really never thought I was supposed to be here. When I first started my career, again, it was in broadcast. I thought I was going to work in radio or TV, and that all changed. And I found myself, doing marketing and communications in an association setting. My goal quickly became, I was sitting on the floor in our office with a lot of other people in a cubicle area. And I'm like, I want to have one of those fancy offices that all the managers get and above. And so my first goal in my career was like, I'm going to become a manager someday. And so when I worked towards that and earned that title, I quickly found myself, I'm like, where's the manual on how to be a manager? And they're like, there is no manual. You just have to figure it out. And I'm like, wow, this is challenging. But I loved learning and just figuring it all out on my own. And so then my next goal became the next level above manager was director. And so I thought, someday I'm going to be a director, but it was very much like you had to put your time in and it would take time to get to that level and you'd have to put years in. And I decided I didn't want to wait. And so that's what made me go back to school to get my MBA at that point and get some of those skills that would take me time to just learn. And so I elevated very quickly. And when I pivoted over to IREM 7 years ago, when I joined their organization, I received a role that had a slightly higher title. So it was an elevation for me, and I was satisfied with that. But I just found myself still working towards that director title. And when it happened, my boss had actually left. She was the vice president of marketing and business development at the time. And so she had left, and everybody looked at me and was like, aren't you going to apply for this role? And I immediately kind of put myself down because there was a senior director level within our organization and I was only a director at the time. And I had just stepped into that level of a role. And I didn't see it for myself, but others saw it and really encouraged me to go after it. And so I decided to apply, and I went into it with the attitude that the worst thing that could happen is that I learn from this experience. And so I just did my best through the interview process, and I actually beat out, I think it was like 28 candidates at the end of the day, and was given the role of a vice president about 3 or 4 years ago. So I never saw that for myself.
No, but I mean, I think it's something that women, we do tend to have that imposter syndrome, like we don't deserve the good things. And that's something I think we have to work on, and actually acknowledging that we are supposed to be there and we are
Mhm.
good enough.
Yes.
And your work and your journey have definitely paid off because your work has been recognized with awards like the Silver Anvil from PRSA. What do you think makes a marketing campaign or communications campaign truly and actually stand out? What makes the difference?
You know, you talked about how things are evolving so quickly. And in today's world with AI, I just feel like things are moving at such a rapid speed. IREM is definitely focused on pivoting for that, specifically with our marketing. And so when it comes to campaigns nowadays, I would say it's focusing on authenticity. That is the biggest thing that I'm seeing because search is changing so much from search engine optimization or SEO to answer engine optimization or AEO. And so now, more important than ever, you can have AI help you build this content and put it together and put it out on all these different channels, which is equally as important. But if there's not that authenticity piece related to the content that you're putting out, your brand is going to get lost in search. And so that's the biggest thing that my team and I have learned in the last 6 months, I would say. And that's such a small amount of time, especially for associations, because we always joke that we're 10 years behind corporates or corporate companies because we're just, we're in the nonprofit space. We don't always have as much funding to do all the cool stuff. And so we find ourselves dragging behind. And what I've been telling people in the association space is this is a time where we can't be behind. You literally need to jump on this right now. And if you're not addressing how things are changing so quickly with AI, you are going to be left in the dust. So you need to tackle it today.
Professional associations rely pretty heavily on member engagement and trust. That's something you guys need. So, from your perspective, what would you say are the most effective ways to keep members connected and engaged today?
The biggest thing that I think is really customizing your marketing to your audience. And again, I'll say it again, we work in the association space and we always tend to be behind. One thing I'm really proud of IREM is a few years ago when I did take over as VP, we very much focused on getting ourselves a marketing automation platform, which is far and few between many organizations, believe it or not. A lot of people are still doing marketing automation, but in a very manual way. And so we recognized early on that this was worth the investment to really be able to customize our marketing and our communications to our members. And so that has done wonders for us. I mean, we've been easily able to grow leads, identify warm leads. And again, especially with AEO taking over, that's going to be more important than ever because people are reading those AI summaries that are being provided and generated based off the questions they're asking, and they're not going to your website as much as they used to. So the more that you can grow people to visit your website after getting that summary, those are the leads that you're going to want to nurture. And we consider them warm leads and really customize our efforts to convert them into customers and then retaining them after that. And so that's what we've really been focused on is more so customization and finding people where they're at. Before it used to be if you build it, they will come. Now it's we need to go out and find them where they're at and be where they're hanging out or where they're getting their communication or their information or reading their content.
Are you a Field of Dreams fan as well? If you build it, they will come.
My dad did make us watch that movie when we were kids.
Of course, everyone did. I think it's interesting that marketing leaders, especially today, often have to balance creative storytelling with measurable outcomes because one without the other does not work. So, how do you approach that balance in your role?
I truly believe in today's world that building creative and compelling stories and sharing them, that authentic piece that I was talking about before, that will make your content go such a long way because it makes you stand out from the noise of everything that's being generated right now. And you can use AI and leverage it as much as you can to optimize your content. At some point, it's going to start to sound like all the other content that's being produced, especially if people are doing it through AI. And so you need some kind of authentic, genuine piece to that, whether it's a testimonial from a customer or a member or a personal story that you're sharing through some piece of content, that's really going to help you, I believe, get those measurable results then, because that's going to resonate the most with your audience and who you're putting content out for and get you those results that you're after. Versus, again, if you are leveraging AI, everything's going to start sounding the same and you're probably not going to hit the metrics or the goals that you're setting for yourself because it's going to get lost in the noise.
Just a few minutes ago, while you were talking about your education, you basically lit up. Like you were glowing when you were talking about studying. And I know that education is a very big thing and a very important thing for you. And you're involved in mentorship and alumni leadership at Lewis University, I believe it is.
Yes.
Why is giving back and supporting the next generation of professionals important to you?
I really felt like when I went to college, I had a lot of odds against me because not a lot of women in my family had gone specifically to a 4-year college or university. On top of it, I was the eldest daughter of 4 children, 3 of which were boys. And so it was very much like, they're going to be the breadwinners someday and they're going to be the ones to support a family. And I was so driven to just be independent. And I felt like, the lifestyle that I was living at that point could only be made better through education. And so I was really driven to go to college. It was such a struggle financially, but I made it happen. And so my freshman year, I got to go to Lewis University. I lived on campus for the year and had the whole experience. And then my parents had some financial trouble and they were actually helping me with my loans. And so all of a sudden I found myself in this position where I had to make a decision. I didn't have all the financial backing that I had had that first year. So I had to rely heavily on scholarships and grants and financial aid. And I even, found myself in the financial aid office one day and I was working with a counselor and she said, you have 3 options. One, can you get someone else, like another family member, to help co-sign some of your loans? And I said, I can't do that. I just can't. And she said, okay, then your next option is you have to move home and it'll lessen how your expenses are. And you're still going to have to pay, a little bit of an amount each month to get through, but it's doable. It's manageable. And I said, and what's option 3? And she said, you give up the college dream. Like you wouldn't be able to do this. And so immediately, like a fire erupted inside me because I had fought so hard just to get to that point to be able to say that I was attending college and I wasn't going to give up on my dream. And so I decided to go with option number 2 and I moved home and I commuted 45 minutes to an hour each way, 4 to 5 days a week to go to college, to live my dream out. And at sometimes I was even working 2 or 3 jobs to fund it. And so I very much know that firsthand struggle of making the dream come true. And so when I started to elevate into higher positions in my career, I found myself making more money, but I definitely wanted to give back because I know that people had supported scholarships that had helped supported my college dream. And so that's when I decided to launch the Bridget Folliard Terrones annual scholarship and establish it through Lewis University and really, focus in on women who were going to college and studying a degree program in the college that I had graduated from and helping them support their college dream too.
Congratulations. I think that's what this world should be made of.
Thank you.
Um, So, looking at the broader marketing landscape today, what skills do you think future marketing leaders, probably those who are studying right now, may be founded by you? What do you think the new marketing leaders will need the most?
I really think flexibility is key. All of the things that we've talked about today, how the world is changing so fast, how marketing itself has evolved over the last several years, even. It's not just promoting things or communicating things anymore. It's very strategic. We are integrated into even other departments and helping departments develop programs and putting a lot of thought and data behind who the audience is, who does this cater to, where can we find them, and what tactics can we put in a marketing campaign to reach them and be successful and then set these goals and hit those goals. It's evolved so much. And I think being flexible with that And not being set in your ways is really going to do you a lot of good moving forward in the marketing space. Because again, as AI continues, you're going to have to pivot a lot of things and keep evolving strategies along the way. And like I said before, with AEO taking over search in the last 6 months, my team has we've pivoted our social media strategies. We've even drilled down to different channels and how we're putting different content on each of those channels based on who the audience is and what resonates the most and what we see being engaged with and have the best metrics, to pivoting our content strategy and really beefing up the blog that we have to produce more content and make sure that we're paying attention to what questions are being prompted through things like ChatGPT and Copilot and Claude and whatnot, so that we have those answers available and not just on one channel. I think the key thing is really mixing up your channels. And so I say flexibility because, with all of that, you have to be flexible and be willing to have an open mind to pivot at any moment when stuff changes or comes up.
Since we were talking about movies, be water. That would be the advice. Okay, so finally, if you could give one piece of advice, only one, to marketers building their careers today, what would it be?
I would say to not be afraid of a challenge. We talked a lot about a lot of different things today and how, marketing is very much evolving. AI is having a huge impact on it. We need to be flexible and change up our strategies. And with all of that comes challenge. And with challenge comes growth. So I would say don't be afraid of a good challenge, because even though you may not know at the time how to address it, you're going to work through it and you're going to navigate it and overcome it in some way and learn something from it. And that will only help you grow your career and become a better marketer.
Bridget, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us today. And for those who are listening or watching, where can they find you?
Ursula, thank you so much for having me on today. Anyone can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share more stories on marketing and talk more about marketing and communications there.